Pond is Vice President for Planning and Capital Projects here at the Denver Zoo. We'll be speaking about the latest project, Asian Tropics. The new exhibit will be a conservation center of international importance, demonstrating how we can help animals here at Denver Zoo and in Asia. George is responsible for the oversight and execution also of the zoo's Millennium Master Plan. He's on faculty at the College of Architecture and Planning at the University of Colorado at Denver as a senior instructor in landscape architecture. And now for fun facts of feathers, fleas, and fur. Please welcome George Pond.
Thank you. I often start my Rotary speeches by saying that you're the finest group of Rotarians I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. This time, I really mean that. All right. So, let's see, elephants, rhinos, and gasification. Oh my, I've got a lot to talk about and only a few minutes to tell you, so I'm going to jump right into it. And by all means, I hope it generates some thought and discussion, and we'll be here, like Craig indicated, afterwards so that we can follow up with any questions as we go through. So to maybe extend what Craig was starting to talk about in terms of the importance of Asian elephants and conservation work that Denver Zoo does, what will make Asian Tropics so special? And I would say there's so many things that I can't get into, but we'll try to hit the ones that are really important to us right now. One, interpretation. Last year we had 1.9 million visitors that came to Denver Zoo that we touched, and we think it's extremely important for us to be able to share the important messages of conservation, the work that we're doing here at Denver Zoo or all over the world, and certainly as it relates to the plight of Asian elephants or rhinos, we have an important message. And so interpretation, you'll see, is a very important part of Asian Tropics. Elephant management. Craig alluded to the fact that the elephants, not only in the wild, but in captive populations, are highly endangered. What we propose to do is build a facility that actually will fill and avoid in the management of elephants in the world, and it's an extremely aggressive goal, and we think it's very important. And finally, environmental leadership. Denver Zoo is not just a wildlife conservation organization. We believe we are truly leaders in conservation efforts as it relates to all of our operations, and I want to touch base on some of the things that are notable inside of the Asian Tropics project that really illustrate how important this is to us. So, just to get us grounded, where is Asian Tropics going to be? It's going to be on the south side of our campus. Our campus is about 80 acres here in City Park, and we're sitting up here, and Asian Tropics is going to be between Bird World and the dromedary camels on the south side of our facility. Again, this is a 10-acre facility. It is by far the largest capital redevelopment that we've ever endeavored to do in all of these years. And the animals that we are going to house here, the animals that are going to call it home, obviously the Asian elephants that we've already spoken about, Indian one-horned rhinos as well. Indian rhinos are even more endangered than elephants. There's only 3,000 Indian rhinos in existence, not just in captivity, but in the wild as well. And Malayan tapirs will fill out the large mammals here in this exhibit. We also will have flying fox, a very exciting bat species that will be housed in the Asian pavilion, along with fishing cats and small clawed otters. So some smaller species, very charismatic and exciting. Gibbons, leopards, as well as some bird species and other small mammals will fill out this collection. So much like our entry project that was open a few years ago, this is really a slice through the Asian tropical forest ecosystem with some exciting species and exhibits to really immerse you in this environment. So first, I want to touch on this kind of the thematic element and kind of the base of the design of this exhibit, as well as the interpretation. So to go to that notion of telling a story, we saw value in really understanding what was important about Asian tropical forest and conservation, and we came up with the notion that in order to save wildlife, you need to help people, and this is a very true fact in conservation, that we need to reach people, the people that share the Asian habitat with the Asian elephants, in order to actually help those elephants. What we've done in this exhibit is essentially create 3 major zones that tell essentially 3 important stories about that. On the western side, the preserve, which is very perhaps indicative of the type of situation of protecting land, and in some cases maybe trying to protect Indian one-horned rhinos, which are oftentimes under 24-hour armed guard. The Asian village in the center, where we have the highest density of buildings, is a chance for us to really talk about Asian culture and the connection between the elephants and the rhinos and the Asian cultures. And the village outpost on the east side, which really is an opportunity to tell some exciting stories about the conflicts between agrarian communities and elephants that happen to be competing for the same land space and oftentimes for the same crops. And that's a really dynamic story that we can interpret and educate our guests on. So that lays down on top of this 10-acre plot and really gives us the framework for Asian tropics as a thematic experience. And obviously this is an elephant exhibit and a rhino exhibit, so I want to tell you a little bit about the habitats. There are 5 main habitats that lay down on top of this here, and as you can see, they are substantial. 5 habitats are an opportunity for us to house more elephants and rhinos and tapirs, and for them to be active during the day in different yards, and I'll explain that in a second. And our guests actually are immersed right inside of that. So our pedestrian pathway comes off of the main path, which is on the north side of this exhibit, and brings you right into the middle of all of this. So you are essentially surrounded by the Asian tropical forest and by all of these species. So much like some of the other new exhibits that we have here at the zoo, it's a very immersive experience. Just to step back for a second and try to put this in perspective, it's hard sometimes looking at images to understand the magnitude of this project. I want to overlay the entire pachyderm facility right now on top of this at scale, and you'll see that this is the elephant yard, the tapir yard, the hippo yard, the rhino yard, and the pachyderm building dwarfed by the commitment of 10 acres to Asian tropics. So it's hard sometimes to look at these images and understand the magnitude of what we're doing. It is truly a monumental commitment to these species. So some fun facts. We're going to have 5 large habitats, 8 smaller habitats for some of the other species that I mentioned at the beginning, and 5 off-exhibit yards to help us manage the collection here. 1.6 acres dedicated to the large mammals in their yards, as well as over 700,000 gallons of water. So it looks like a blip on the radar when you look at this drawing, but we have probably more water here than we have anywhere else in the zoo combined right now. So again, a very impressive commitment for the elephants and the rhinos, and tapirs, who are all very aquatic. So how does this work? Connections. Not just, obviously, our storytelling and connecting with people, but the physical facility is driven by connections in order to make it work. And many of you passed through our front entry project, and you may know already that sometimes the lions are in the main yard, and sometimes the hyenas are in the main yard. And that's a technique that we call rotational exhibitry, which allows us to move animals from one exhibit to the next. And we are planning on doing that here with Asian tropics at a much, much larger scale, obviously. So we connect in front of, behind, between all of these 5 exhibits, and given our keepers and our animals an opportunity to move through this exhibit during the day, during the week, during the year, and see new places and move and really